Hey guys, it is great to see you. It is great to be back. It's great to be with you. I've been gone for 4 Sundays, and now I'm back. And so I missed you guys. I know you guys had some Taco Bell, right? See, I leave and you get the good food, right? You get the Taco Bell. So seriously, it is good to be back. Thanks for being here. We're gonna play a game real quick. Actually, before we play a game, let me just, I got a Pizza Hut gift card too to give away. Tonight's youth group was sponsored by Pizza Hut. And by sponsored, I mean that we paid for it all. So I've got a gift card to give away to you here in just a few minutes. First, let me just say this. Let me just give you a little nugget that I really want you guys to know and to take serious. So moment of seriousness for just a second here, okay? I want you guys to know that sometimes in life things are really difficult, and life is difficult, and things are thrown at you, and it's not the way that you would have expected to go. That's why we're talking in the series called Stronger that we'll get into in just a few minutes. That's because of that, but I want you to know that it's okay to not be okay at times. It's okay to not feel okay and to not be okay at times. And the reason I'm telling you this is just because part of the reason that I was out for an extended period of time was because we had a baby, obviously, and that's cool. But I took a little bit of extended time because I was just at a place where I just, Gage, what do you, where I was not feeling like I was okay. Like I was not feeling like I was as good as I should have been, and I needed to take a step back and breathe and just be okay, right? And so I had to kind of build up the courage to ask Pastor Paul for a little bit of extended time off, and that was kind of a humiliating, humbling experience where I had to say, I'm not okay, I need to take a few extra weeks off. And he was gracious, and the church has been gracious to allow me to do that. But the only reason I say that is I want you guys to also know that at times it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to recognize and to admit that you're not okay at times. We are living in a really crazy time, right? Like school is unlike anything that you've experienced before. Sports are even weird. Marching, I was talking to Ethan, marching band is weird because there's nobody, stands aren't full. You can't do competitions. Sports are weird. Everything is weird. You guys are sitting in youth group and you can't be next to each other without wearing a mask. Everything is just weird right now. You're seeing tensions in political realms, and there's just so much going on right now. And I just want you to know, I really, really, really desperately want you, as my teenagers in my youth group, to know that it is okay to not be okay. And it is okay to feel that. And my encouragement and really what I would plead of you is that when you're at that point where you're feeling like you're not okay, please reach out to someone. Please let somebody know. Like I said, you can ask Chelsea, I talked about, it took me building up a whole lot of courage, and it sounds silly, but it took me a whole lot of building up courage to walk into Pastor Paul's office and just say, hey, I'm not okay, and I need to step back for a minute. Of course, it was fine, right? But it took that courage because there's this idea of I'm looking like I'm weak. I'm a weak man. I can't handle it. And so it kind of took that. I just want you to know it's okay to feel like you're not okay. Please, please, please reach out, okay? Reach out to me. Reach out to any of the adults in here. Reach out to someone. Tell your parents. It's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to seek help when you're not feeling okay. Cool? Are you guys good with that? Okay, all right. But man, let me tell you, seeing your faces really does make me feel better. Okay, here we go, guys. Let's jump in here. I don't want to keep you long. Lizzie doesn't think I can finish in time to be out of here by 7. She has very little faith in me. What? Okay, so here we go. Last week, we started a series called Stronger. Right? Dave taught us last week, right? Yeah, okay. So we talked about this idea that in life, hold on, time out, 30-second time out. Actually, 2-second time out. Do me a favor, just put your phones away, okay? Put your phones away. Phone's under your seat, in your pocket. wherever, so that they're not distracting you. There we go. Okay, super. Excuse me. So we started this series called Stronger. And basically with this idea is that life doesn't always go the way that we think it should, or the way that we want it to. Life has ups and downs, and it has difficulties, and it has hardships, and it has trials and struggles, and it doesn't go the way that we think that it should, the way that we would like it to. And so what do we do in those times? What do we do when that stuff happens? What do we do when life throws us a curveball, when things just don't go our way? And so we're talking about this idea of stronger. And so last week, you guys talked about the very beginning of things, right? God had created things to be a certain way. God had created things to be the way that he wanted, where everyone was in right relationship with each other, and they were in right relationship with God, and they were in right relationship with creation, and everything was the way that it was meant to be. But what happened in Genesis 3? Something bad happened in Genesis 3, right? Namely, what? Food, yeah. Food is always bad. That's not true. Food is usually good. The fruit. So Adam and Eve are tempted by this fruit. They partake in it, and everything just kind of goes haywire, and things are just not the way they were meant to be. Things get thrown into chaos. But what Dave talked about, is that from this moment of chaos and this moment where things weren't as they were meant to be, God began working to bring about redemption. Somebody tell me what redemption means. Jimmy, you got an answer there? I see a hand, but no. Yeah. Okay, what's redemption? Bringing back something that was once there. Yeah, or like returning something to the way that it was intended to be, right? So creation, all things had been created a particular way, and when sin entered the world, then things were not the way they were meant to be, and God wanted to bring about redemption, to return things to the way that they should have been, the way that he had initially created them to be. And so he brought about redemption. And what we see throughout the entire story of Scripture is God working to bring about redemption to this world that had been broken, starting with this eating of this forbidden fruit. And so we see as the Old Testament goes through, and God is bringing about glimpses of redemption, and it culminates in this moment in the New Testament where Jesus kind of conquers it all and defeats evil in this moment of death and burial and resurrection. And we can ultimately say that redemption has been brought and redemption has been kind of fulfilled. God is redeeming things. God is in the process of redeeming things. But we also know that even after Jesus, things aren't the way that they should be, right? Right? Like you would all agree with me that right now, things aren't the way that they were meant to be, or things aren't the way that they should be. Or another way to put it is, things aren't all good, right? Somebody help me out here, right? Like, are you guys in agreement here that not everything is good? Okay, there is some bad, right? There's good. Definitely there's good, but there's also things that aren't the way that they are meant to be. So God is in the process of putting things back together, and he invites us into this process. And so one of the ways that we can be stronger in the midst of our times and our periods of trial and struggle and things not going our way is to remember that God is in the process of bringing about redemption, redeeming things to return them, restore them to the way that they were meant to be. So, let's keep going. Have you ever been confused about something? Anybody ever experienced a little bit of confusion? Right? Maybe it's instructions that were given. Maybe it's in the midst of your online schooling sessions. There's just this random, obscure instruction for an assignment, and you're like, I don't get it. This is not making any sense to me, and you were confused. Or maybe you're new driving, and somebody gave you some directions on how to get somewhere, and like these instructions are just not clear, and it led to confusion. Maybe it's mixed vibes that you're getting from your significant other, right? Like your girl is just confusing you. Don't shake your head yes, Gage. She can see you. Maybe you felt confused, like, I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what I did wrong, but she's mad at me. I'm so confused right now, right? And what happens when we're confused? Confusion leads to frustration, which leads to more confusion, and everything gets chaotic. For me, just a personal example here, I'm kind of dabbling in some photography. Like very loosely dabbling in photography, right? I don't know what I'm doing, but I got a camera and I'm taking pictures. And so I took Quinn's newborn pictures. I did those and I got that down. But man, then I start to try to edit the pictures in Lightroom. And like, I just have no idea what I'm doing, right? It's so confusing. And if you ever looked at the interface of Lightroom, it's just buttons everywhere that do all kinds of things. And it's all based around color and color theory. Well, I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm colorblind. And so like, if editing is all based on color theory and like what color looks good and you're colorblind, it just doesn't work. And so I get so frustrated, and then the frustration leads to more confusion, and it's just chaos. And I'm like, why couldn't the camera just take the picture the way that it should have taken a picture? And I wouldn't have to edit it. Sorry. Got on a little heated soapbox there about photography, Gage. Got to calm down. When we get confused, it just piles on and it's frustrating. But sometimes there are things in our lives that cause even bigger and more significant confusion than Lightroom and editing pictures, right? Sometimes there are things in our lives that throw us so far off course, bad things that happen to us, breaks in relationships, severed relationships amongst family members, amongst significant others, whatever it may be. We're thrown into these moments where we are just confused. And we wonder, what in the world do I do? How in the world can anything good come from this? But here's what I want you to know. As we look to be stronger, as we look to figure out, well, how do we work through difficult times? How do we get through these difficult times? Here's what I want you to know. In the midst of our confusion, no matter how big it is, no matter how great it is, no matter how bad the situation may seem, in the midst of our confusion, we can learn to trust God. We can learn to trust God in the midst of our confusion. I want to tell you about a guy from the Bible. You may know this story, but this is a story of a guy named Joseph. I'm going to have you let's do some interaction here, okay? I want you to help me out here with the story. All right, so Joseph. What do you guys know about Joseph? This is Old Testament Joseph, by the way. Not Jesus's not quite dad, but the Old Testament Joseph. All right? What do you guys know about Joseph? Somebody just throw something out. Yeah, he had dreams, for sure. Yeah, for sure. He had weird dreams. Absolutely. Who was Joseph's dad? Somebody remember who Joseph's dad was? Starts with a J. Jacob. Yes! Jacob. Is that right? No, I'm just kidding. Yes, so son of Jacob. Okay, so what do we know about Joseph? Being the son, he had brothers, right? He had other brothers, but where did Joseph fall on the line of favored siblings? At the very top, right? He was the favored sibling. He had these dreams. He was good at interpreting dreams. His father loved him so much that he gave him what? A robe that was very colorful, a coat of many colors, right? So Joseph gets this beautiful coat from his father. How do you think he interacted with his brothers when he knew that he was the favorite son? Yeah, he rubbed it in, right? He made sure his brothers knew that I'm the favorite. You guys are all scum of the earth. I'm the favorite son. And what do you think that did in the relationship? Right, it kind of caused a little bit of tension, as you can imagine. And it kind of culminated with this moment where Joseph had this dream that essentially said that his brothers would soon be bowing down before him. And what do you think he did with that dream? He told his brothers, right? And what do you think that did? It escalated the tension even more. So we have Joseph. He told his brothers, y'all are going to bow down to me. He's already his dad's favorite son. He's got this coat of many colors. And the brothers kind of plot to bring harm about Joseph, right? They plan to kill him. Like, if he's going to rub that in our face, and someday we're going to bow down to him, and we're going to wipe him out. We're going to kill him, right? Cooler heads prevail a little bit, and one of the brothers says, I don't think that we should necessarily kill him, but let's do something else. What do? Sell him into slavery, right? They sell him into slavery. So when you can't kill your brother, you just sell him into slavery, right? So again, crazy things happening. Brothers turning against him. For sure, Joseph has a little bit of blame here. He doesn't get off scotch-free with his arrogance and his bragging and his making sure his brothers know that they're going to bow down to him. So he certainly has some fault here, but probably not enough to cause the brothers to want to kill him, right? So they want to kill him, but cooler heads prevail. They say, let's not kill him. Let's sell him into slavery, and then also go tell our father a story. What do they tell the dad? Do you remember that? Yeah, he kind of got attacked, and what's that? I don't know what you're saying. Yes, good job, Jimmy. I don't know what you're saying. Yeah, so they tell the dad that he got attacked. He's dead. Sorry, Dad. In reality, he gets sold off into slavery. When things are, as you can imagine, okay, so just let's pause the story here for just a second. Put yourself in Joseph's story. Imagine the confusion and the chaos and just the utter, I don't even know what word would be a good word to use, that Joseph would be feeling. His brothers, his blood, his family were so upset at him, and rightfully so. They should have probably been upset, but they were so upset at him that they tried to kill him and then decided instead to sell him into slavery. Put yourself in Joseph's shoes. Things are confusing. Things are chaotic, right? Like, this is like, you got to imagine, this isn't just like, okay, you're going to go away from your family for a few weeks and then come home from summer camp and things are going to be back to normal, right? Like, you're being sold into slavery. That's complete removal from your family and a complete break in that relationship, and things are bad for Joseph. Joseph is obviously going through a really difficult, confusing time in his life where he can't see how this could possibly turn out good. Well, what do we know happens? He gets sold into slavery, but remember the skills that he had in interpreting dreams, right? He used those skills of interpreting dreams, and I'm kind of just giving you a very broad overview of this picture. I'm not giving all the details of the story, but he uses these skills that he has in order to kind of build up some reputation, and he's kind of working his way up in Pharaoh's. I don't know what you want to call it, his people. Like he's working his way up. He's doing all these great things, and things are starting to look up for him. Then there's this wrench in the story where you remember Potiphar's wife. You remember what happened with Potiphar's wife? We know how that story went, right? Potiphar's wife tried to use her good looks to get Joseph to just kind of not really do good things. You know what I mean? And so in the midst of this story, Joseph is like, no, that's not okay. I can't do that. Potiphar trusts me. I'm a good guy. I'm a man of integrity, and I don't want to betray Potiphar. And so what's he do? He runs. He runs away. Potiphar's wife grabs his cloak, tears it off, has a piece of cloth, and says, look what he did to me. I even have his cloth. I ripped it off as I was trying to protect myself. Look what he has done to me. And so we find Joseph again in the midst of this confusing and chaotic and frustrating and just not good situation. What happens then? Again, he starts using his skills of interpreting dreams to kind of work his way back up the ranks and to bring about good, and things are looking up in this situation. Joseph, I believe, through this process, through all of this confusion and this chaos, but feeling that God is looking out for him, Joseph has learned that even in the midst of this confusion, in the midst of this chaos, in the midst of seeming like your life just can't get any worse, Joseph has learned to trust God. Joseph has learned that he can put his trust in God. And so we see in the midst of this confusion, things start to happen. He starts to work his way up. He starts to become higher and higher in the kingdom, and he's really got a lot of power. And what do we see? How do we see this story end? He's kind of worked his way up so high that he's essentially overseeing the land. He's actually been put in charge of something very significant. He's been given a lot of power. He has worked his way from this life of confusion, this life and these circumstances where things just couldn't get any worse, and he's been put in these positions of power and these positions over people, and he's been placed in these just prestigious positions, and things are looking really good for him. So he's learned to trust God. Now here's what I think. Let me throw a little twist into here. I think it's easy for us to think that the proof that God is working for good and redemption in Joseph's life is the fact that Joseph had been put into these positions of power and things had been good for him. Right? So it's easy for me to say, oh, Joseph learned to trust God because in the midst of his confusion and his chaos and his struggles and his point where life had been at the bottom and he was just struggling, it would be easy for me to say he learned to trust God because God put him in places of power. And God did really good things to him, and he was living life large. And so, of course, it's easy for Joseph to trust that God is bringing about redemption and God is working for the greater good. But can I tell you, I think that if we were to stop the story there, then we would be missing out on a significant part of this idea of redemption. If we were to just say, oh yeah, God used all this bad, and even Joseph says later, what you had intended for evil, God turned into good. And so it would be easy for us to just say, oh yeah, all that bad stuff that Joseph had, God was redeeming that, and in that redemption, he just brought him to power, and he brought prestige, and he brought honor, and his life was good. But if we did that, we'd be missing out on a significant piece of redemption. The story ends with one of Joseph's dreams that he interpreted, actually signifying that there was going to be a drought coming on the land. And there was going to be 7 years of famine where there was just not enough food. And so in preparation of this, Joseph had been placed in charge of overseeing the distribution of the food for all of the people so that they would have enough to survive throughout this famine. All right, well, in the midst of this, guess who comes to get food? You don't have to guess. You probably know. Who comes to get food? His brothers. Follow this story for just a second. His brothers, who had once wanted to kill him, but then just decided to sell him into slavery, who he hadn't seen for a really, really long time, they put him in the midst of all of this chaos and confusion and threw his life into shambles. They were coming to who to get food? To Joseph to get food to prepare for this famine. Now, put yourself in Joseph's shoes. What are you feeling? You're feeling like you're in a pretty good place, right? Like I'm in charge of all this food and my brothers who wanted me dead and sold me into slavery are coming and I have to be the one to give them food. It's time to get even, right? That's not how the story goes. We see this beautiful interaction of Joseph's brothers. And again, I'm kind of skipping over some details here. But ultimately, we see this picture where Joseph interacts with his brothers. And he tells them, man, what you guys had planned for evil, God redeemed for good. And we see this moment of forgiveness. And we see this moment of reconciliation. And we see this moment of redemption. Remember what redemption is? It's returning things to the way that they were supposed to be. What about this family? They were broken. The family had been broken up because of different actions. There was a fracture in the relationships in this family. And through all this chaos and through all this confusion, God brought about redemption where this family had been reunited. If we stop by saying that God worked this for good because Joseph made it to a place of position and authority and his life was good, then we're missing a significant piece where God actually brings about redemption to this family. So in the midst of our confusion, in the midst of our chaos, we can trust God. But we can trust God for what? We can trust God to do what? Yes, redeem. Sometimes I think that we're tempted to think when we think we can trust God to redeem, that means that He's just going to fix everything. That He's just going to take our difficult times and our struggles and when life just really sucks, that God's just going to, if He's going to redeem it, then man, He's just going to fix it all and everything's going to be good. Can I just tell you from observation and experience, that's typically not the way this works. But in the midst of this chaos and this confusion, what I've learned over and over is that I can trust God to bring about redemption even in the midst of that confusion. God is always working toward redemption. Maybe it's redemption of family members who you're not as close with or you've had a fallout with. Maybe it's redemption with friends who you were close with but something happened. Maybe it's redemption in a shattered and broken family life. And maybe it's God working towards redemption, but God is always working towards redemption. We can trust God to work towards redemption. I want to be very careful to make sure that you don't hear me say this. Please don't hear me say that God causes those confusing moments, that God causes those hurtful things. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that God, in the midst of those hurtful and chaotic and confusing times, God takes those and wants to redeem them. He wants to bring about good from them. He doesn't cause them so that He can bring about good. He wants to bring about good from those situations. I want to make that point very, very clear before we wrap this up. So let me ask you this. What might God be trying to redeem in your life? What might God be trying to restore in your life? What are the places of confusion and chaos and struggle and frustration and hurt and pain and just bitterness and anger? What are the places in your life that God wants to bring about redemption? Again, not saying that God caused those things, but what does God want to do in order to redeem them? How might God be working in the midst of your difficult situation? How might you see God at work in those situations to bring about redemption, to restore things to the way that they were supposed to be? God, thank you so much for your redeeming love. God, thank you that you are not satisfied with just leaving us in our mess. Thank you that you care enough about us that even when times are difficult, when things are ugly, when things are just not going the way that we want them to go, God, that you use those situations, you use those moments to bring about redemption. Not that you cause them, not that they make you happy that we're going through them so that you can teach us a lesson. But in the midst of our brokenness, you step alongside us. You walk alongside us to bring about redemption. So God, would you show us those places in our lives that need redemption, that need reconciliation? Show us those relationships that have been fractured, whether it's our fault or someone else's fault. God, would you reveal those to us? Would you show us those? Would you also show us the ways that you are working to redeem and restore those relationships? Thank you for your love for us. Thank you for your grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.